Last time on Adventure Archives. We experienced an unending torrent on California's coast, camped in the mysterious foothills of Mount Whitney, felt the foreboding heat of Death Valley, and found our way here to Las Vegas. We gambled away some money, won some of it back, had a few drinks, and enjoyed a restful night in this hubristic and lascivious city. Now, in the second episode of this 3-part special, we continue our journey through America's Southwest. We'll take you to the highs and lows of Utah, the wonders of the Navajo Nation, and the curious corners of New Mexico. Buckle up and get ready to join us on our adventure. The city that had seemed so restless was, at dawn, completely still and silent.
The others were passed out, as they had gone back out later in the night to experience more of the city. But now, it was time to get the day started.
You guys up? You guys want a little sunshine? It's really nice out. Get some of that vitamin D. That'll get you up in the morning.
We checked out of the hotel, made our way to the parking garage, and shuffled our things into the car.
We got one last glimpse of all the glitzy civilization as we left Vegas. The skyscrapers around us faded away to reveal rugged mountains.
Back into the wild, we reflected on our time in Sin City.
I keep saying, but it was sensory overload. I mean, you get outside, there's like every little corner of each casino, each hotel has this beautiful, intricate detail.
I was impressed with like the themes of each hotel. That was actually kind of cool. And you actually won some money?
Yes. Went to the slot machines, put in a $5 bill, ended up winning $25, took that 25 and then lost all 25, stuck in another $2, won $59, walked away, and so that's it. I'm happy.
It was good to be surrounded by mountains again. Accompanying the excitement and glamour of Vegas is a palpable sense of desperation and emptiness. But out in the mountains, your spirit becomes rejuvenated. The rocks around us became redder and redder, and we soon entered Utah.
The mountains on the horizon became more pronounced and distinct. Towering high in the sky, we had left Sin City and found redemption in Zion National Park.
We arrived at our campsite, which was surrounded by majestic, crimson cliffs. Here, we sorted through our gear and filled up on water in preparation for a day full of hiking.
From the campsite, we made our way to a shuttle that transported people throughout the canyon.
There is no traffic crowding out Zion, only bikes and buses. Perhaps a result of Edward Abbey's suggestion that visitors to parks be liberated from the confines of automobiles.
And now, Thomas and I would be liberated from the confines of this bus.
Good luck. See you later. See you guys. Have fun.
The trail is
See you tonight. Take your time.
We were splitting up so that we could each explore different parts of the park and share the experience with each other.
Andrew and I continued on to our destination, as Robby and Thomas began their hike to Angel's Landing.
So, we're about to get on the trail, and I'm pretty sure that's Angel's Landing up there. And the thing that's kind of surprising is it looks just like a butte that's standing out in the middle of nowhere. So I have kind of concerned how we're going to get to the top from the backside. I mean, look at it.
That's gonna be crazy, dude.
It's just straight up. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. We made our way to the trailhead, passing by a warning about sheer cliffs. So this should be like a cakewalk compared to Mount Whitney, right?
Oh, totally. This is like starting from Whitney Portal, going up to that log.
Oh, okay.
You know that log crossing up there?
Well, it might have been a cakewalk, but we're talking about one thin slice of cake here.
On our way to the trail, we saw a Merganser hen preening itself in the river.
We had our sights on the cliffs above, but for now, we were surrounded by riparian vegetation and prickly pear cacti.
In the meantime, Bryan and I had just arrived at our destination, the Narrows. There are no sheer drops here, but hiking in a canyon presents its own dangerous risks.
And the hazy sky above did nothing to avail any of our concerns.
Well, Robby was saying that it wasn't going to rain today. He checked the weather. But it is a little cloudy. I mean, it's not like super overcast, but there's definitely some mist up there. Yeah. I'm hoping that the risk of flash floods is low, but we will see.
We continued down a paved path as the towering canyon walls above began encroaching more and more on either side of us.
Feisty squirrels scurried in the leaf litter, searching for food, and lush vegetation dangled from the cracks and crevices in the cliff faces, thriving off of the moisture trickling through the sandstone.
We were continually in awe of the cliffs above us, and we wondered how the others were faring as they made their way higher.
So this is, you said, how much of the distance compared to what we did at Big Sur?
It's about 2/3. So this is actually only 1,500 feet elevation gain, just under, I think.
It's so weird. Once you've done like a mountain,
Yeah.
like a legit mountain, this doesn't seem intimidating at all.
No, I mean, like, this
It'll
is
still be difficult.
I think this will be like a perfect hike for someone who's just getting into mountain hiking to do. Sure, it's a little iffy at the top, I hear, but everyone I've talked to who has done it has been like, this is a great hike.
It's really nice.
Yes, it is.
We had already gained a bit of elevation, and Thomas spotted a familiar tree.
So I think this is a juniper tree right here. Now, it's much bigger than the ones I'm used to back in California, but the way I can tell is you got these little white berries on here, but I think it is used to make gin.
Oh.
And some other food too. But you can tell because it's a coniferous tree, and it grows in the desert. So that'll go well with my gin and tonic.
Although the Utah juniper isn't typically used for gin, the Hopi Indians use it for medicine and ceremonies, while the Navajo have used its wood and bark for shelter and bedding.
We climbed higher and higher, zigzagging up the massive wall. Already the views were stunning, and we weren't the only ones enjoying it. Squirrels right behind you. Here's the
No, don't feed the squirrels.
here's the crinkling of the food.
We continued up our paved path, just as Bryan and Andrew were reaching the end of theirs.
We could hear the rushing of water in the distance as we passed by another flash flood warning.
More vegetation grew from the moisture in the rocks, but where we were headed, there was more than just a bit of moisture.
Immediately, the water was well above our ankles, and it was frigid cold. We weren't exactly wearing the proper gear, but hey, that's never stopped us before. That really wasn't that bad at all.
No, we've definitely waded through colder, like the Dolly Side's winter. That was probably the coldest I've experienced.
Yeah, I will say the coldness is the worst part, and like, if we were gonna get gear, I think it'd be more to protect from the cold than to keep ourselves dry, because I mean, the wetness really isn't that bad, especially in this weather.
My only real concern is just keeping myself stable when I'm crossing.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem like the rocks were too slick.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. They were way less slick than I would have imagined.
Yeah, it's just a matter of not stepping on like the wrong shaped rock.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, that's sort of like the first like litmus test. And so the crowd has thinned out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I imagine the
I'm
further
sure
we
it'll
go.
thin out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens from there.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how pretty it is.
Yeah. Now, it was back to the frigid water.
My legs are starting to go numb. It's really cold water. So that's definitely the worst part right now, is just the coldness of the water.
And then, relief once again. Your thighs and your legs will start to get cold. So I can see that if there isn't any shoreline here, we're going to have to see how far we can go. But as long as there's some land that we can kind of take shelter on, we're going to wait a couple minutes and let our feet warm up before we continue.
Yeah, the good thing is that it's so sunny and dry that your feet do warm up really quickly. They're not going to dry off, but the biting cold goes away really fast. So while we're waiting for our feet to warm up, I noticed there's some really familiar plants growing here, box elder, which back in the east I also noticed this grows near rivers, so I think it's more of a water-loving plant. And you can tell it's box elder because it's a maple, so its branches are opposite growing. Some of the younger branches have this really smooth green bark, and the leaves have this distinct sort of branching pattern that almost makes it look like poison ivy. But yeah, it's in the maple family, loves rivers.
You'll often find box elders alongside cottonwoods in riparian environments like this. We continued further down the river, far, far below the cliffs above.
As Thomas and I made our way higher, we were rewarded with increasingly beautiful and surreal views of the canyon below.
As we gazed out, we felt something familiar about all of this.
It's so weird how similar this is to the trail up to Yosemite Falls from Camp 4.
It's incredibly similar.
But I mean, it goes on this side of the canyon. It zigzags up. You got the same beautiful cliff faces here, just in red and desert form.
I wonder if it's gonna be as never-ending as Yosemite Falls was. Just every time we thought we were almost to the top, it wasn't even close.
I redid that hike in November, and it was just as bad as I remember.
I was gonna ask.
Continued on the trail, and although we were still on the paved path, it was clear that we had already made some significant elevation gains.
I think the temperature's dropped 10 degrees at least. It's cold in here.
It's not like the Narrows, but this is kind of like a slot canyon that you do see here. Just these little streams carving their way between the rocks over millions of years. It's like when you go to a museum as a kid and they spent a long time sculpting a great American West fake landscape.
This is a real thing.
It's astounding to think that these cliffs, which can reach up to 2,000 feet high, are all made of sandstone.
In fact, they're some of the tallest sandstone cliffs in the world, and they were formed in part by the erosion caused by the Virgin River. But describing the geology of the canyon in words just doesn't do it justice. All around us were swirled, wavy stone, textured by stratified seams of rock, and painted with cascading water. We waded deeper into the Narrows, where the looming cliffs enshrouded us in their shade. Wondrous waterfalls slid down the smooth walls, and we stopped to admire the wilderness all around us. We were enraptured by it all, even the subtle patterns and colors that covered every square inch of sandstone. Our feet had dried up a bit, and we admired the distant cliffs once more before getting a move on. The canyon stretched much farther than any of us had expected.
So right about now, Bryan and Andrew should be in the Narrows.
Narrows or just finishing up the Narrows?
Or eating lobster. I'm gonna guess lobster.
They definitely didn't have to hike up as much as we did, but I'm not complaining.
No, this feels good. One thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of international visitors here.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because whenever people ask me, it's like, is the United States cool? It's so big that I forget that this type of place is part of it. So like I always just think of like my home, which is pretty boring, and I'm like, nah, it's pretty boring, but I'm glad that people get a lot out of the rest of the country.
It's kind of like going to asking someone in Siberia, do you get any Americans in Siberia?
Yeah. How much further do you think?
I don't know. Rule of thumb is a mile and a half. That's a drop. Not as bad as Yosemite Point, but
No.
still good.
We still will probably be dead.
Little by little, the tops of the cliff seemed that much more tangible. The bottom of the canyon, a little bit less so.
We wound up a series of steep, dizzying switchbacks.
Just climbed up that down there. Whew. I definitely felt it when we went up Yosemite Falls. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
With elevation, for me, it's not as much the uphill as it is the downhill.
And we stepped off the paved path onto the top of the cliff.
Whoa, okay.
Yo, that is like really unexpected.
That is not at all what I wanted.
Because we saw people up here, and I thought they were just like relaxing up here, and no, that's a very sharp drop.
No, that is a well-deserved view, but my palms are definitely sweaty.
I'm gonna back away slowly now.
I do know from the I think I read on since the park's founding, I think only 7 people have died up here though. Hopefully I won't be the 8th. Hopefully you won't either. Hopefully no one will be.
At the bottom of that 1,500-foot drop, the cold, crashing waters of the Virgin River. Here, secluded from the arid heat, lush vegetation grows from rocky crags, more resembling a Midwestern forest than a Southwestern desert.
So something that's a little bit interesting is that there's all these maidenhair ferns growing all along the rocks, even though outside of this canyon, everything is just desert, sort of dry, arid brush. But obviously because there's all this water rushing through, you see plants that you might normally see even in the eastern US in a very moist sort of deciduous forest. And yet here it is clinging to these sandstone walls. Really cool.
The water that supports these plants seeps between the different layers of sandstone. But to support humans, a healthy snack is always useful.
It's really interesting because it's like most of the time you'd never imagine yourself hiking for something like this. But it definitely hasn't been easy.
I'm wearing jeans, which are not ideal for this sort of thing, but honestly the wetness is not the problem, it's more just the cold. So even given the cold in the water, I still feel like we had an easier hike.
It'd be really interesting to see. One thing is that we know for a fact is that I don't think Thomas expected it to be like this, because none of us did. So they probably think we have it like super easy.
Yeah, they probably think we're like on a lazy river or something.
I got an inner tube floating down a river.
Okay, so this next segment, we're on the chains. People are taking it real slow, but I think we'll be fine. Me and Andrew did it in China. It was a literal 90-degree incline. You just had to step up stairs, or basically rocks, and there was a chain.
How far was the drop though?
I mean, it was like probably 50 feet, but
I think it's
still.
a couple thousand. Not a couple thousand, but 1,000 or so.
It actually looks a lot like China. Wow.
Oh, there's a little freaky, but let's try it out.
Let's do it.
Strenuous climb.
Strenuous climb.
Oh, since 2004, 6 people have died. My bad.
This is terrifying. Wow, let's do it. I don't know, these shoes are quite old actually.
All you need is one hand. Probably need to put on some
Now we made our way up the weathered rock and twisted roots, with a hand always firmly grasping the chain.
Look how worn down the rock and wood is.
At certain moments of the hike, it was kind of easy to lose sight of where exactly to set your next step.
Okay. Wasn't sure if there was a one-way route going on here, or if it was two-way, or what.
It was nice.
Wow. I'm gonna grab onto this before I look over.
Okay.
What is it?
Look over there. Same view we just had, but
Yeah.
my goodness, it really puts it in perspective. It looks like a little bowl of cereal.
Absolutely.
Solid chain, though. That's for sure.
That is no joke. Andrew and Bryan having a lobster right now. Just walking on some.
Andrew and Bryan are lying on flat ground, feeding each other lobster.
Oh my God. Jeez Louise.
Well, we were less eating lobster and more feeling like lobsters ourselves. But, as amazing as the hike had been, a couple of soggy boots were absolutely worth it. Deep in the recesses of the canyon, it felt like we were in a mystic land, and we became mesmerized by its mystic creatures. This American dipper fearlessly dives into the water, using its wings to swim gracefully beneath the river currents for up to 6 meters. It uses a second set of eyelids to search for insects hidden in the rocks submerged below. We were a bit less graceful as we sloshed through the river, but it was that rugged way of traveling to see incredible sights that made the hiking here so rewarding.
And no matter where you were on these cliffs, there was no shortage of rugged terrain.
I'm just gonna keep on going. Hope I don't die.
I am positive I can do Half Dome.
This is Half Dome, basically?
No, Half Dome's so much easier than this. The heights of Half Dome are so much easier than this. Half Dome itself is 16 miles, but
But is it chains the whole time?
there's chains, but it's like you don't fall off, you just fall down.
Oy, oy. Yeah, this is butt-clenchingly terrifying.
We reached a part of the hike that seemed to lead us towards a knife's edge of a trail.
A few feet to our left or right, and there was a sheer 1,000+ foot drop.
Just having your hand on the chain is so reassuring.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So what do you think? Do you think Bryan and Andrew will be jealous, or will they be glad that they missed it?
Andrew and Bryan's mom is going to be happy they didn't do this. Our moms might not be.
I mean, our moms will probably be nervous, but yeah, Goo, I'm glad you don't have to watch Bryan and Andrew do this.
This would be a great place for a chain.
Nah. Who needs a chain? People who put the chains in, they didn't need a chain.
That's true.
think it's time to sing a song. In the big rock candy mountain.
Sun went down.
I don't know the words at all.
We never do.
I never seem to know them.
My God. What the hell are we doing?
Just don't think too much about it.
Yeah, no. I can see why going down is much worse experience.
I will say, the traction is quite good.
Yeah.
This was like the 50-foot we did up in China. Maybe more steep than that, actually.
I remember seeing that, yeah.
As long as I got one hand on that chain, I feel pretty good about it.
No, I was just, no.
Although,
Don't do that.
that going down there is... Yeah, it's just I can't think too hard about the drop on the left.
Robby and Thomas were getting ever closer to the terminus of Angel's Landing. There was only a little bit left to hike, but the trail remained ever treacherous.
Andrew and Bryan had traversed deep into the canyon, but the sun was falling and the water was growing ever colder. And so, they turned around and retraced their way back out of the canyon.
Finally, they had made it out.
But atop the cliffs, the others faced more dizzying heights and rough terrain.
Bolt to the side of this mountain here, and their trunks just find every little small hole and crevasse they can go and burrow themselves into it.
Yeah, these trees definitely are not afraid of heights. That's for sure. Yeah, this is like a victory lap now compared to everything else we've done. If that was the worst of it, then yeah.
It's like an altar.
Oh yeah. I guess if you were crazy enough, you could stand on it.
I'm not.
I'm not either.
I think I'd become an angel.
I'm definitely not either.
Probably not an angel.
How does this compare to when you actually went out to the top of North Dome? Was it similar?
It was similar if you had like 200 feet on both sides.
It's just us, isn't it? Yeah, I'm good too. Thomas, you son of a...
And so, they had made it to the top of Angel's Landing.
Other than the elevation that I'm feeling right now, this was definitely worth it.
It was a perfect day hike. I mean, the first part was like, anyone could do this.
It was literally paved the
Yeah.
whole way.
And then it's like, okay, you made it this far, amping it up really hard now.
You know, people talked it up a lot, but I actually feel like it's a little bit underrated. Because people talk about Yosemite so much, but Zion is incredible. It's just as good as Yosemite.
I've gotten so many people to say, oh, you gotta do Angel's Landing. Oh, you gotta do Angel's Landing. And when I first came into the park, I'm like, I don't know if it was just because I was tired or not, but I was like, this place is beautiful, but like, it's not Yosemite.
Yeah.
And now I'm on top of this and Angel's Landing, and it's like,
No, it's good, man.
it gets you. It gets you. It's like,
I've said this pretty much every trip, but I am always amazed that each location has its own character.
totally.
Just beyond what you would expect, too. Just every single time, it's so unique, even if it's similar to something else. Like, this is similar to California, but it still has its own unique character.
Absolutely.
Yep, well, sun's going down.
Yes, it is.
We might want to go, too.
Yeah. I'm kind of getting hungry.
I am, too, actually. We gotta join Bryan and Andrew for their lobster dinner.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Back in the Narrows, Bryan and Andrew came across more fat squirrels. And as they waited for the shuttle, they encountered some other wildlife.
setting sun's light, the red cliffs glowed like burning embers.
As we made our way back to the camp, the world around us seemed to come alive.
We saw herds of mule deer grazing in the grass.
And a hellgrammite squirming in the sand.
Dude, I love this feeling right here. Just like nobody's around. Day is done.
Like abandoned railroad train station things.
Do we want to be
Love
in the
it.
center? Yeah.
Now, we had all made it back to the shuttles.
The last day's light faded away to dusk.
We soon arrived back at camp and awaited Bryan and Andrew.
Yo, are you at the campsite? Yeah, I know you're a little choppy, so let's see.
Is that actually them?
I think so. Sounded like it. Ingus, you there? Oh, they just got back too.
Oh, nice.
Oh man.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, first let me note that these rocks are nice and warm. Because I am quite cold right now. I don't know about you two.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'll show you what happened.
Of course, Andrews.
It's blue too.
That was literally just hiking in a river.
You didn't have to do it.
Wait, so very beginning, you're up to here in water.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And it was like
Freezing
you walk in-
cold.
Yeah, freezing cold.
Were there other
So-
people doing it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they
had like they got from the center, they got like the waterproof cans with like the warm shoes and stuff.
Why'd you do it then?
because it was
we
awesome.
were there, man, and we were gonna do it.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask is, while you guys were hiking, were you thinking, oh man, Robby and Thomas are gonna be jealous?
No, actually.
No.
Okay.
The whole time we were like, wow, Robby and Thomas would have been miserable here.
Would have been.
Oh my
Likewise, we would have been miserable doing what you guys did.
Dude, it was really good.
You were probably thinking we'd be jealous, right?
No, we actually were like thinking the whole time, it's like, oh man, they're down there eating lobster.
Yeah.
Like hiking up chains and stuff.
No,
Was that rough?
like for the first 2.5 miles, it was perfectly fine. It
was paved actually. It was
really?
paved
It was all the way up.
Yeah.
And then we get to this top, and then we're like, okay. Then you're like literally on chains, like.
Holy cow.
Ours was like, remember when you crossed the river, when we crossed the river in Seneca?
Yes.
It was basically that the whole
Except
time.
you're going through the river.
constantly.
You're going down the river.
Was it pretty at least?
It was
Yeah, it was
beautiful,
really
yeah.
pretty,
And
yeah.
so basically what you'd have to do is you'd find little bits of land here and there and get up on those to warm up and dry out. Because if you, like, there were points where my feet were just going numb and I was like, I don't feel pain anymore.
It's like, keep going, I don't feel anything. It was like, that's a bad thing.
I feel like that's not the way it's supposed to be done.
Dude, that is so funny. Of all the things I expected to happen, it did not even occur to me that you guys would walk through a river and come back wet.
Are you guys cold at all?
No.
Because I am definitely shivering a little bit.
Okay, let's get back and get the fire going.
We were back in each other's company, and Andrew got to processing the firewood to cook tonight's dinner.
Not only is the wood dry, but we've actually got a fat wood bundle of fat wood. We're getting this fire started tonight. Come hell or high water, and I've already experienced the latter. The stars had come out, and we were preparing for a beautiful evening. As I continued with the fire, all natural, organic, and butane-free, by the way, the others got a bit impatient with how meticulous I was in preparing the kindling. You're all a bunch of Philistines, is what you are. You can't appreciate the art of the wood. Okay, so we got some bacon of wood. Just gonna shave a bunch of this off. See, that's dry wood. That's wood that's not so soaking wet you can't light it in a desert. I did start the fire with natural tinder.
Now that the fire was going, I prepared some more wood to get it nice and roaring for dinner.
I got to preparing supper. Some steak cooked in a cast iron skillet over the fire.
Oh, God, that is not nearly as ready to cook as I wanted it to be. Just sizzling.
We stoked the fire, threw some rosemary on the meat, and had ourselves some cold refreshments.
This is the life. Sitting back, drinking fluids.
Let's see how this turned out. I'm feeling medium rare.
Oh man, not bad. Did you study under Emeril Lagasse or Iron Chef Sakimoto?
I studied underneath the great Jamie Vaughn. He was a friend of mine who taught me how to cook steak. This is the just traditionally salt and peppered with rosemary and butter seasoned, while the other one is the apple wood. Thank you.
Ooh, not bad. Good job on the
very good,
seasoning.
yeah.
Yeah, break me a piece of that bread. I gotta break bread with my enemy.
Anyone else?
So you'll see it in the bloopers, I'm sure, but we had a little hanger going around the camp.
Personally, I get hungrappy.
When it ends in a steak cooked in butter and rosemary, I think it's all worth it. So when you guys were hiking through the water today, did you think you'd be eating steak?
Nope.
Yeah, don't tell Thomas, but we're gonna fork some of this butter into the veggies too. I approve. He was just commenting on what a wonderful man you are.
You're definitely crunchy, but it could be worse.
Nothing wrong with a little
sometimes
crunch to vegetables. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have vegetables with their nutrients intact.
Good job, Chef Sinard. Who originally recommended this to you? And did they specifically say Angel's Landing in there?
I can't tell you. It's kind of like who recommended Yosemite to do?
You did.
Oh.
Those are really good. Well, nice.
You should feed it to him. You put that on your fork. Open your mouth.
Were you gonna eat these? Thomas? Great meal.
Thank you.
Delicious.
Thank you.
This is...
You gave me such a headache making it, but that's all right.
You gave yourself that.
It had been a long day, and an evening full of laughter with a bit of bickering sprinkled in. Exhausted, we fell asleep for the night.
The next morning, we broke camp and made our way out of the park.
We were headed to our next destination.
All around us were more red cliffs, grassy fields, and open skies.
Finally, we arrived at our destination, the sovereign Navajo Nation.
Today, we'd be hiking on a tour of the lower Antelope Canyon.
Our guide made sure he had all the essentials,
Nice catch.
and we were on our way.
We can continue.
All around us was flat sand.
But when we stepped down into the canyon, we were transported into an entirely different world.
Shaped by water and wind, the curtains of sandstone seemed to move and flutter as we continued down the long, narrow corridor.
I didn't realize it was this long. It's like never ending.
The most photogenic place I've ever seen, and the most graceful rock formations.
The flowing ripples of stone shimmered in the sun.
And before long, we were back on the surface.
Pretty cool.
It's amazing.
Here, we passed by some fossilized dinosaur footprints, and our guide demonstrated how the canyons were formed.
Waters from an ancient ocean soaked, compressed, and hardened sand into stone.
So a lot of it is just a lot of pressure on top, which compacts it together. Then the sun just helps kind of cook it, harden it up. Once this happened, more wind brought more sand. That's where you start to see those layers. And then more water. And then here's where it comes the wind erosion. So wind erosion will take away pretty much anything that's not there put together very well. For you guys, if you want to do this for a science fair, you'll probably win.
You get an A.
The addition of more sand results in different striations in the stone, and water and wind erosion shaped and smoothed the stone into what we had just seen, and continues to do so today.
Far into the future, the canyon will be even deeper than it is today.
So, in a couple million years, it will be a lot lower.
Now, it was time for food. And what could be better than a place that serves tripe tacos?
Also, our guide recommended this place. It's good recommendation so far. Looks like Mexican coleslaw of some sort.
When we were in the Sierras, we had Chinese food because it was appropriate for the place. Now we're having Mexican food. Before 1848, Mexico's border actually went all the way up north of here to the northern edge of Utah. So basically, we're in Mexico, and Mexican food is very appropriate for this region. Robby and Bryan got burritos, but I have a more refined hipster palate. We've got the tripe and the buche, which is deep-fried intestines and stomach. So let's try the stomach. Very good. Oh man, that's really good.
Does it taste better or worse than the taco place you go to in Columbus?
Better. It's got more flavor, saltier kind of. Wanna try it?
Stomach. I think the first time I had this type of taco was with you, and that was in the same place in Columbus. What time was it? On your belly. There's so much of a different texture than meat. Muscle meat is this kind of tastes like chicken, everybody would say that, but this is it's greasier, smoother. Like when you bite into it, it has a little bit of give to it. Good.
And as for Thomas,
This is a mole burrito. So it's mole is like a chocolate sauce. Never had it before.
I've also never had mole sauce. So. Whoa, that's a lot sweeter than I expected. It's really good though. That's delicious.
Take a bite. The way the chef intended. It's a lot sweeter. I know it's not, but it's almost like Nutella in a way. But like not in an overly sweet kind of way. Just like that perfect combination of salt and sweet that you crave when you're on the trail. Nice. To mole.
We were all satisfied after our meal, and Bryan and Thomas left to get coffee while Andrew and I waited in the back lot.
our next destination was just a few miles away, and as we made our way from the unassuming parking lot to the trail, Andrew spotted a desert plant.
So this is a plant in the Ephedra genus. This spindly-looking plant is commonly called Mormon tea, as the caffeine in coffee is prohibited by Mormons, so those who originally settled here made do by drinking tea with the stimulating effects of ephedrine from these plants. We also saw this edible Kanaigri dock plant.
Now, we trudged up the trail and made our way towards our destination. Soon enough, we saw it.
Whoa.
Horseshoe Bend.
Oh my god, yeah.
It was a stunning sight, though a bit scary for anyone with a rational fear of heights.
There's been so many times where we've been somewhere where it's so big and so far away that you can't get a good sense of how big it actually is. This is one of those times right now.
Below us, a speedboat curved its way around the river bend, giving us a sense of scale.
And a vulture soared through the air, zipping through the canyon. It was a sight we had seen in so many pictures, but experiencing it in person was entirely different.
So actually, I'm extremely impressed. I was actually expecting to be underwhelmed and thinking that it wasn't going to be that amazing, but this is unbelievably amazing.
I literally have like no words to describe the vastness of this. If you look at the hut down there and the trees, I mean, you just can't fathom just how massive this was, and it was like created naturally. It's just, it blows your mind. I love the colors of the blue water with the green vegetation all around it. It's like that combined with the red rocks, it's just this really beautiful palette of colors.
For me, I was surprised by how narrow the bend is. Because whenever I see it, I'm convinced it's a panoramic shot, like a fisheye lens that just warps and bends it. But no, this is actually how it looks.
It's out of nowhere too, because I just thought it was going to be like an overlook on the highway.
Yeah.
But no, this is like you walk over the hill and suddenly it's there.
I've never more felt like I wanted to just lazily float down a river.
We continued hiking around, experiencing the river from more impressive vantage points.
But the higher we got, the windier it became.
The wind out here is so powerful that not only does it feel like it's waving your own body around, but the rocky cairns that people have set up were wobbling just from the wind alone. I'm gonna go before I get blown over the edge.
After that brief stop, we were back on the road, and the environment was gradually changing all around us.
So what do you think of this landscape?
It's really cool. It's like you see some cool mesas in the distance, and it just feels so much like you're driving through the set of a Western or something.
Yeah, this is like the first time that I felt like we've really been on some desert roads that you imagine when you think of desert roads. It's very Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner-ish.
The thing I've noticed the most is the contrast between the red rock and the green vegetation on top. Like, it's just such an interesting color combination. And in Death Valley, it was more just like kind of brownish.
We stopped along the way to fill up on gas.
And then it was back on the road driving through the Wild West.
We drove through the Navajo Nation, and soon we saw towering monoliths jutting out from the horizon.
Here, the rock formations were even more distinct and otherworldly than anything we had seen yet.
The mesas formed a surreal backdrop to the scenery around us.
There was no mistaking it. We had made it to Monument Valley.
And when you're here, you have to stop and experience it outside of a car. The Navajo call this Tebe Nziskai, the clearing among rocks.
It was considered an enormous dwelling or home, and its isolated position protected it from outsiders for centuries after Spanish explorers first started traveling the region.
In the early 1900s, Anglo-Americans and Native Americans disputed ownership of the valley.
It was only when the valley was thought to have no prospects for the mining of resources or gold that the valley was returned to indigenous people.
Now, we made our way to the evening's final destination, a primitive tent site hosted by a guy named Mark.
His dog, Coco Chanel, led us to the tent site.
As it turned out, it was more luxurious than primitive.
Okay, right here we've got Chateau Monument Valley. Up here is where Andrew's going to be sleeping.
That's not where I
Right here is where Thomas is going to be sleeping. And here's where me and Bryan are going to be sleeping. This is living right here.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have me right here, Bryan here, Robby here, and Thomas laying horizontally.
I feel like we set up camp in like the middle of the Sahara Desert, and we're like, we gotta take shelter from the wind and the rain and the storms. Luckily, we found this furnished tent out here.
After we were through doing our Bear Grylls impressions, we played with the dog and took in our incredible surroundings.
And then, Mark came by to drop off some firewood.
While he was there, we chatted a bit. He told us about how the butte behind us, known to most as Mitchell's Butte, got its other name, Turtle Butte, when his uncle flew a helicopter up there.
They landed on top of this butte right here. He found like a little turtle like this, on top. Yeah. So I was like, well, how did we get up there? You liar,
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. We don't have any turtles here, too.
As the sun faded beyond the horizon, we watched the stars come out and reflected on our trip so far. We've been so busy lately, I'm having trouble relaxing and appreciating where I finally am. And finally, after I've sat here and I'm starting to look around and learning to unwind.
As a kid, you always want to experience, man, wouldn't it be great to just be a cowboy out in the West? This is, I imagine, where the term cowboy camping came from. It's good times.
So the whole time we've been driving, I've been looking out at the scenery. And I think this is what I've been looking for. Being out here is you just see all the beautiful mesas all around us.
You feel the wind, the softness of the sand. It really makes you start to appreciate the desert, not only in its beauty, but also in its roughness. And there's like a weird sense of calmness I'm getting just from like being out here, kind of dirty, kind of gritty, kind of rough, and just like taking it all in. Really gives you a sense that like you want to preserve a lot of these wild places and leave them be and not pave them over with roads or electric visitor centers or anything like that.
Dusk became night, and as I rested in the tent, Andrew decided to start a small fire. The bark of the juniper wood that Mark provided would make perfect tinder after a bit of massaging. Once the juniper wood itself started burning, it gave off a pleasant aroma, almost floral, but also reminiscent of a barbecue. I could see why Edward Abbey called it the sweetest fragrance on the face of the earth.
In the warm company of the fire, we did what we are wont to do and started talking about life.
We talked about something very specifically on the first episode, which is that I never got the memo to be an adult. And I know it's kind of embarrassing to say that I'm still like finding my way to be able to be the driver of my own life, and I'm 33 years old. I think a lot of people can relate to that, and that even now people, when they're like in their 50s, 60s, 70s, when they're around their parents, they act a certain way, and they still feel like they have to act a certain way. I feel like I've actually made some progress in that regard. Doing things like this where you just like, you know what, I'm gonna drive across the country with my buddies and we're gonna just go out camping under Monument Valley. I mean, it's not like the most radical act, but it further pushes you along that path of being your own person and making your own decisions.
It's kind of freeing, actually, to be able to tell yourself, you know, I'm gonna go do that, and then, you know, you can go make it a reality.
This is luxury, man. I don't care who you are.
We're sleeping in a bed in the middle of the desert.
This is awesome.
We're trying to make it down loud so we don't wake up Thomas, but yeah, I almost feel like I don't even need a sleeping bag. I'll just lie down on the floor.
You sure you don't want the bed?
Sandy. Yeah, and then I got my sleeping bag.
It was a windy night, but we nonetheless fell fast asleep.
In the morning, we were greeted with a sunrise whose magnificence matched the landscape around us.
As we packed up, we reflected on the windy night we had had.
I mean, I slept pretty well, but it was about the same as sleeping in his head because of the wind.
Yeah, you keep waking up here and there, having dreams about things shaking and rustling.
But you know, this is easily the most comfortable I've ever been in a tent like this. Even though the wind was shaking, it was kind of fun. It was a new experience.
I was on a bed, so it was extremely comfortable.
I can't say much. I was on a bed.
Yeah, on the floor it wasn't that comfortable. I dreamt about thunderstorms.
Yeah, every time I woke up and I heard the noises, all it made me think of was like someone who would like turn over in a bed and just violently like shake the covers, and I just want to be like, stop moving.
I have no complaints. It was great. The wind can't be helped.
Yeah,
but it's great.
I think I'm most amazed that the tent didn't blow down. The wind was that strong. It just stayed up like a pig's house. Well, the final pig.
After milling around for a bit, we headed out. Before leaving, we stopped to say thanks to Mark and his incredible hospitality. And And then we stopped by a small local diner for breakfast.
So we were hoping to get the Navajo fry bread, but unfortunately they're not making it, so we're just having breakfast. But have you had it before?
I've had fry bread, and it is the most delicious thing ever. Oh my god. The story with fry bread is that it was born out of like Native Americans surviving off with the rations that the U.S. government gave them, and it was like not nutritious food at all. It's sort of become this symbol of like resistance because that's what they used to survive, you know?
Mm-hmm. Many of us have heard of the Cherokees' harrowing experience on the Trail of Tears, but the Navajo people had also endured the Long Walk, in which Navajo people were deported from their land in an attempt at ethnic cleansing in 1864. Thousands of people were forced to walk 300 miles without any aid, and hundreds of people died.
Although our morning felt so distant from these stories of atrocities, we felt that we had to maintain an awareness of these things while on Navajo land.
And our next stop felt like an appropriate place to reflect on all of the history of this region.
We passed by more rock formations and fields, and they were just as impressive as they had been for the past 2 days.
Along the way, we found ourselves passing through a bit of a dust storm.
This is a super harsh environment to live in. Like, can you imagine? All of your stuff must be caked with dust all the time. And your breathing apparatus, your lungs, that is.
I really wonder if it's like this year-round, or is it just the season?
I don't know, dude.
I don't know, I can't imagine it being like this year-round.
But I bet you people who live out here are very hardy.
Definitely not softened like some of us are. I include myself in that category.
So just 10, 20 miles in the other direction. Literal Dust Bowl, sandstorm, harsh, crazy conditions. And now a forest has just popped up and it looks like we could be in the Midwest. Like suddenly the environment had changed. Now we've got all these forests everywhere.
We turned off the main road and headed towards Window Rock.
Crows soared against the powerful winds, which blew tumbleweeds all around.
This area is not only home to an impressive arch, but it is also the capital of the Navajo Nation.
And as we took in the sights, I stopped to inspect some plants.
So all around here there's juniper trees, the same sort of juniper that we used to start our nice smelling fire the other night. You can see it's got the shaggy bark, the distinctive sort of evergreen needles, and also some berries up there, which are actually used to make gin. And all collected along this wall are tumbleweeds, which is actually a plant that originated in Eurasia called Cali tragus. And what happens is when the plant has its seeds mature, the entire plant dies, breaks off, and just rolls and disperses its seeds that way. Each one is just this perfectly round shape. We've just seen them tumbling across the highways the entire ride up here.
And on a blustery day like this, they were also tumbling through the air.
Nearby was a statue dedicated to the Navajo code talkers.
Though there were other tribes involved in code talking, the Navajo are among the most well-known.
A code based on the Navajo language was used by soldiers to transmit intel in World War II. Despite poor treatment by the U.S. government, Navajo people enlisted into the army to defend nature from attacks like those at Pearl Harbor.
Before leaving, there was something we had to do.
Making some fry bread with stew. So you're the master chef?
No, he is.
He just said the same about you.
Pepper hunt sauce.
Now, it was time to eat.
That was good. It's like a tortilla that's just extra fatty and extra good. Oh.
It reminds me of a Chinese youtiao. Airy, very puffy. It has a nice chewiness to it too.
Oh, it's good. It's like a light vegetable soup with potatoes, carrots, celery, some meat. Yeah, try it. Okay, let me try this fry bread for the first time. This is just a non-sweet elephant ear.
I'm glad we could get it from the Navajo Nation
Yeah, it's
capital.
like-
These are people who are survivors, and this is the symbol of that survival. And like, just in the past few years, we've seen Idle No More, Standing Rock, just continual resistance against a system that has, for lack of a better word, tried to commit genocide on them, you know? But they're survivors.
Whether talking about the Long Walk or resource extraction on Navajo land, it's easy to think of the Navajo people as passive victims, but it's important to remember that they have fought and continue to fight for their rights today in struggles against uranium mining, oil and gas drilling, and more.
Now, it was time for us to move on. We were meeting our friend and fellow YouTuber James and his wife Karen in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Or more specifically, the location of Los Pollos Hermanos in the show Breaking Bad.
After eating some Hatch Green chili burgers, some ostriches just outside watched us curiously.
That is a weird creature. Things happen. It's so big, it's huge, isn't it?
We were in awe of just how strange they looked up close.
Looks like an arm with a head on it.
The feathers look weird too. Like, they're so thick.
Then, it was to Old Town Albuquerque to take in some of the sights.
This historic town was originally built by Spanish colonists in the 1700s.
The town featured 10 blocks of historic adobe buildings, many of which are home to shops and restaurants.
Let's do the whole square, you know. The church is beautiful.
Let's do it. Lead the way.
You guys are going to love it all. It's great.
As we wandered, James regaled us with ghost stories from the area.
You go through this opening here to that courtyard back there. That's where the hatchet lady is supposed to haunt. And rumor has it, under the gazebo, there are some Civil War soldiers that are supposed to be buried there. And they've even gotten some EVPs, if you're electronic voice phenomenon, where they asked them, "Why are you here?" And the response was, "Shite, we's a dead." Whether it's a ghost thing or not, I'm not sure, but it's interesting to
Jar Jar Binks.
There was a, yeah, it kind of sounds like it, but that was pre-Jar Jar that they recorded it though, so. Okay, so this tree used to be behind the church, and I believe it's over 100 years old. Somebody carved and painted the Virgin Mary in there, and when the tree started to die, they brought it out to the front so that we could all enjoy it and still have it as part of Old Town's history. So to give you an idea how old this stuff is, if you look up underneath here, see these little straight lines that go up and down? That's because when they were flattening out this piece of wood, they were doing it with an axe. And that's what those marks are from. So this wood is probably over 200 or more years old. It could be even older. And you gotta wonder, a tree this big, how old was the tree 200 years ago, you know?
The building standing here is the San Felipe de Neri Church, which was built in the 1700s and is one of the oldest surviving buildings in the city.
I've always loved this courtyard. It's just a beautiful, kind of peaceful place. You would never suspect that it's in the middle of the city.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's like a whole, you know, Albuquerque has this kind of stuff mixed in.
This is actually very familiar to us. It's what Thomas used on his steak a couple nights ago. It's rosemary. And if you take a whiff, you smell a very strong, fragrant smell. It smells exactly like the steaks tasted.
We wanted to go into the church, but
Someone's wedding rehearsals.
So we went around a different way.
Listen, but
Why don't we
we'll circle back this way because all churches have cemeteries, right? Well, the cemetery was right there, and they had to take all the bodies out and plant them somewhere else in another cemetery in town when they put in the shops. But supposedly, there's a lot of haunted activity over there as a result of that. Now, another little quick trivia here about the church is sometimes nuns get pregnant by priests. We don't want to all think about it, but it happens. And sometimes the babies were killed or stillborn. Some of them are buried in the adobe of the wall still. So there's some skeletons in there. Yeah, it's actually known. They discovered them when they were remodeling them one day. So they just left most of them there that they could, as to not to disturb it. But so it's kind of interesting to think of a church that's over 300 years old and some of the good and bad things that are associated with it.
Yeah, I love the look of this place. The look is so unique and southwestern, you know?
It really is.
Love it.
There's a shop up here on the left, Church Street Cafe, and they have, I believe the ghost is named Rebecca, but don't quote me on that. She might have a different name, but they supposedly have a pretty nice ghost inside the Church Street Cafe.
Which one's the naked one?
That's back in the square. We'll get to that one in a minute. Yeah.
We need to set up some cameras and.
Well, sometimes I feel like he's like building us up for a really big prank, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, and that's where the hatchet ghost is," and we'll be like walking in, someone like comes chasing us, we're like, "Ah!"
I wish I would have thought of that, man. That would have been awesome. Now this is the actual courtyard where I met Cloris Leachman, and that was a lot of fun.
So when I was in Mesa Verde, we saw the old cliff dwellings, and they had the original wood that was supporting all the bricks and the rocks. So I bet a lot of the wood that we see in this courtyard is just completely original. So in Mesa Verde, they use cedar wood, and the reason it never rotted is one, it's an arid environment, and two, the wood is just so full of resin that prevents any sort of rotting or degradation over time. Those dwellings were built in the 1100s, so this is only 300 years old by comparison. So. We passed by some interesting artwork, stopped by the Our Lady of Guadalupe Chapel, and found our way to a guitar shop where Bryan got a guitar.
Then we went to get some meth from the candy store.
This is red chili chocolate. This is green chili chocolate. We'll start with the green.
Oh, is it Jackson? Find this tiny little.
You can faintly taste the green chili, and it's got a spicy kick to it.
It's kind of similar.
I couldn't taste the red chili because I was still tasting the green chili, but you should try it.
You definitely taste the spice.
Yeah, you can taste the spice like afterwards, kick in the throat.
The green one, you can actually taste the flavor too.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's really good.
There were all sorts of intricately decorated treats of all sorts of colors.
We all felt like kids in some kind of a store. Then, the candy lady took us into the special back room where she ran her secret meth operation.
This is where the magic happens?
This is it. So we have different sizes of hats, and we have aprons.
Sweet.
You could be Walt and Jesse at the same time.
Well, I'm Heisenberg, baby. Yes. Say my name.
They wanted something that couldn't be made, number one. They wanted something that looked good, you couldn't see it. I mean, because you couldn't see it in the first two seasons. They didn't want it to look like real meth. So that's what they came up with this. Because in the beginning, nobody thought that show was going to make it.
Wow.
The cast and crew said, oh no, we don't even have a budget. They sent them here with hardly any money. They had to get everything from Goodwill. After Bryan was giving it away on Letterman Leno, he was doing these little bags. Yeah. So we started making a bunch of these, threw $1 on them, threw them in a bowl, and I never in my wildest dreams did I think they were going to sell. Wow. Because who would pay for that little bit of candy?
Fools like us.
Yeah. Thousands of bags later, here I am. So.
Sorry. You're gonna
You look
take
like a
those out of
blind
the
candy man.
Debbie is great here, guys. She's been part of Old Town for a long time in New
Almost
Mexico.
38 years.
And we love her. We're so happy to have her. And now the Breaking Bad thing is kind of fun too. So
It's excellent. These are all my own recipes of my mother. This was a mistake of my mother's back when I was in the 60s when I was in high school.
Good mistake. Happy accident.
We left the candy store with satchels full of goodies.
And then James showed us one of his favorite trees. Well, maybe not his favorite tree.
the mortician.
Mortician.
Yeah, he was stealing everything from the bodies, and they hung them here, the townspeople.
It's another cottonwood, I think.
Cottonwood's got a bad reputation now. Then James pointed us in the direction of our favorite ghost.
Back in the old days, 100 or so years ago, this building right here with the second floor was the brothel. So you could come down, and it usually cost back then about $1 for a poke. And yes, they called it a poke back then. Now, up here on top on the second floor, rumor has it that there is an Irish prostitute that was killed here because she became the favorite of the locals, and the other women got jealous, threw her down a flight of stairs, and rumor has it that you can see her on certain nights run across the balcony naked. Not seeing that now, though. I can go up there and get naked for you guys and do it if you want me to. You know, it might not be as good, but thank you, man. It was really good meeting all you guys, and I'm so glad you got a guitar. You know, you too, man. Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Yo, how on earth do we keep finding people who are so incredibly knowledgeable about the places that they live? Like, we had Johan, we had Scott Koenig, now we got James Blackburn. These people are all experts on such a wide range of subjects in their hometown. It's ridiculous.
I was actually just thinking that as we were about to leave, about how this trip, like, while the views and stuff we have seen have been amazing, it's also just been a trip where we've met so many interesting people so far.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, when we started the show, definitely did not expect to meet anybody, let alone this many cool, interesting people.
Yeah, it's just been like the experience of meeting them and talking with them has just added so much to this.
Yeah, it's been good times.
1,000 feet.
We had such an amazing time exploring Albuquerque with James and Karen, eating candy, trying the green chilies, and learning about the history of the city.
Our experiences with the natural wonders on Navajo land and our interactions with the people who hosted us there are ones that we'll cherish for life.
And our adventures at Zion and on all the land that has been protected by, as Edward Abbey put it, the actual working rangers in the field, who are capable, honest, and dedicated, have shaped us to this day. One of my very favorite feelings is being like basically the only people at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere. Just gives this sense of adventure where you're like, you know, you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing with your life.
The old rest stop?
Yeah, the old rest stop by yourself, you know, the twilight.
In your hair.
Yeah.
Somewhere in New Mexico.
Somewhere, yeah, you don't even know where you are.
Somewhere in New Mexico.
In a way, the Southwest feels less like a geographic location and more like a journey through time and space. And sometimes, you don't know where that journey will take you. It's often in these aimless, uncertain parts in our journeys where excitement and aliveness become palpable. But they can also be moments of distress and desperation. And the things we experience can mold us and change us forever.
We arrived late at night in Tucumcari, New Mexico, where we pulled into a windy KOA to stay at a campsite tonight.
So the trip, I think, has officially reached the halfway point.
Yeah.
It has.
What do you all think of the Southwest so far?
Southwest is amazing, but it's very windy.
Yeah, this last stretch has been super windy.
I'm surprised at like how much of the U.S. I haven't seen yet. And having gone through the Southwest, I finally feel like I've seen a lot of the variety that it has to offer.
It's so cool just seeing like all the different blending of cultures, you know, like indigenous people, Mexicans, everybody else.
Yeah.
Those other people.
And besides the places we've seen, the people we've met met have been absolutely amazing. You know, from like the people we met up in LA with, to Warren, James, Blackburn, and Mark that we met at the Airbnb.
Yeah.
Everyone's just been so friendly. And Karen, yeah. I kind of grouped her with James, but
James
yeah.
Blackburn and co.
Yeah, but it's just like everyone's so friendly and they're so like willing to help out and just tell us all these cool things, and it's just kind of reassuring about like human nature that people out there are just good people.
I mean, for God's sake, if the four of us can get along this well, there's hope for the rest of humanity.
Everybody is on a journey. Everyone has a story, an adventure.
It's so easy to judge people, to stand from afar and scrutinize every flaw in their lives without considering the journey they've been on.
It's easy to ignore the histories, contexts, and complex situations that shape people's lives.
In our brief time in the Southwest, we've experienced so many things, seen so many different cultures, and met so many different people.
Each of those people have come from a specific history, grown up in a unique culture, and taken a distinct journey in life. If we want to create a world where everybody can be happy and at peace, that's something that we can never forget.
Colonel, I've infiltrated the facility.
Excellent work, Snake. Next, you'll need to track the members of Foxhound: Sunjan Huang, Greg Cribb, Jason Bourgeois, Ann McBride, and Tuck and Coop.
All right, what's next?
Tell Cooper, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Captain's log, stardate 4.2069. We've come into contact with an alien race called the T. Bryce Ryan, which said that their shoutout was in memory of Carl, Boy Genius, for inspiring him to get outdoors and hike. Commander Keith Trice, I've landed on the planet. I've made contact with the alien beings, and I'm going to try to communicate with them. Norman Mountjoy, When the Walls Fell. Philip and Jessica Liu, at Tanagra. John and Lisa Truitt, Their Arms Wide.
Looks like Captain Lin made first contact with the alien life form. Mr. President, looks like we got an incoming communique from James Pruitt. He says, I'd like to give a shout out to my sons, Gage, Gabe, and Sam for my life's inspiration, and you guys for keeping the adventure alive and doing all that you do to inspire people to connect with nature. Do you have a response, Mr. President? Make sure we send a special message to the James Pruitt thanking him for that. Also, don't forget to include Jacob Milliken, Expedition Research LLC, and the folks from Trails We Hike. It's because of all those fine people that we're able to do what we do. So, do you have all that? Yes, Mr. President, I got all that, Mr. President, and might I say, you are looking awfully fine today. Very handsome.
I'm Brian Grills.
Alright, here I am in the middle of the Jim Potts Wilderness, and I think it's named after someone named Jim Potts. But when you're trying to survive out here, I always remember the advice of my good friend Dennis Yo, and that is, to the better version of myself. And now that I think about it, that's not really good survival advice, but whatever. Now, one of the things you want to be very careful about when you're out in this wilderness is the ferocious Hong Long, which, as I believe, is translated to Red Dragon. I didn't even know dragons existed until right now. Now, in this land, the natives worshipped a god, and they inscribed his name on trees everywhere. And you can see, right here, it translates to Joe Fender was here. Now, when you're out here trying to survive, it makes you really reflect on the good times you had. And I'll tell you, once I get out of this situation, I'm gonna go get a beer with my good friend, Charlie Joe. This one's for you.
This is the place where they filmed in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Los Pollos Hermanos. I guess it's really called Twisters, but I thought it was like kind of a more desolate area. But there's just a main road right there, and then like there's a bunch of stuff over there.
But yeah, it looks just like it.
Oh yeah.
They still have it. Well, we have there's a Breaking Bad tour that takes you in the RV from the show, and they come down here and do pictures and stuff. That's
so cool.
I think they have a Gus mask here that you can put on, and it looks like realistic.
So this booth right here is the one that they used in the show.
This is the location. But we also, in Old Town, there is the ghost of a Irish prostitute that runs across the balcony of what used to be the brothel back in the 1800s. Apparently, because she was Irish, she had this beautiful red hair and really pale skin. Well, she was a little bit different than the other soiled doves of the time period. And so she became a favorite really quick with the locals. And so the other ladies got jealous and they threw her down a flight of stairs and killed her. So her ghost is supposed to run across the balcony naked. So, and then there's another one.
That's the ghost we gotta see.
Yeah.
Starting to taste the green chilies.
But yeah, it's not super spicy, but it's really good though. So here's some more chow coming in.
It's really good. It has a really good flavor to it. The red chili is really interesting, really good flavor. I just put some on my burger, which is a green chili burger. I'm gonna try a bite of that. It's Christmas burger now.
There you go.
Now it has a different taste than from before. That's really good. It's a little spicier now.
The red chili is much creamier, and it's really good.
I'm a red chili guy.
Okay.
She's the green chili girl here. But if I had a choice, I really would put it both on there at all times because they're both really good.
Is there like a type of personality that goes with a certain type of chili?
That's a good question.
Conservative, liberal.
You could polish that whole thing down, I think. Yeah, I could. So there you go.
As soon as we drove into this place, we were like, this looks exactly like Jackson Hole. You enter from the same street right there. They've got this gazebo right here. This was the bar that we were dancing at after Yellowstone the second time. You remember that? Yep.
My YouTube channel is called The James Blackburn Experience, and that's exactly what it is. It's all aspects of my life, from the private and the personal to the fun and to the movies, and sometimes lots of beautiful hiking and backpacking too. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Like, subscribe, comment on his channel.
Thanks, folks.
In the words of Conan, this is very humorous. I could do a very humorous bit with this, but I won't.
Just use your imagination.
Well, look at this one. This is like a little bit too much detail.
Fortune only knows what will come in our next great adventure as we travel through Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, and back to Ohio. Please join us next time on our conclusion of our road trip. Thank you very much.